are very fortunate to have Dr. Kuiljeit Uppaal join us for an extended interview for her thoughts on achieving greater application of human rights.
Dr. Uppaal, the world's first image scientist and genius polymath, has been honored with several awards for her excellence in the world of innovation, so education and social impact, including the prestigious World Innovation Award Hall of Fame Honor 2019, Innovative Education Leadership Award for Excellence in Social Innovation and Global Impact 2019, World Education Award 2018 for Innovation, just to name a few. And Dr. Uppaal is an image scientist, a pilot, a CEO, an entrepreneur, creative director, an author, and an educationist. So with such incredible experience, we're looking forward to hearing Dr. Uppaal's views on from her experience, the views on human rights and how we can support the efforts to promote human rights around the world, especially in today's society. So welcome, Dr. Uppaal.
Thank you so much, Judy, for inviting me over. It's an absolute delight to be talking to you. And thank you for all those kind words to introduce me so beautifully. Thank you.
Of course, we're very excited to have you. And for Dr. Uppaal, as we know that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted by the UNGA in 1948 in an attempt to understand and set boundaries to help us all, help humanity respect each other's rights. And human rights laws constantly evolve as our world is also constantly changing. So what do you think are some key points to ensure human rights protection in today's society?
The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a milestone document, as we all know, for the world that proclaims the indisputable rights which everyone is entitled to as a human being, regardless of race, color, religion, sex, language, nationality, social origin, property, birth, and all, of course, the other statuses. And yes, I agree with you that changing times and changing scenarios will prompt and should prompt and propel new ways of looking at things. And in line with this thought, we have seen that the human rights laws are also constantly evolving, which is a good thing. We know that human rights are at the heart of the United Nations SDGs, because in the absence of human dignity, we cannot hope to drive any sustainable development. So one needs to understand the hand-in-glove system between the two, the balancing of equation, if I may say, wherein human rights are driven by progress on all SDGs, and the SDGs are driven by advancements on human rights. From my perspective, if one looks at the key points to ensure human rights protection in today's times, that is the year 2020. Well, this is the year of COVID-19 pandemic, which I believe has been the biggest catastrophe for the world since probably the Second World War. And in these times, I think the focus has to be on recovery, on building back what we have lost, keeping human rights as a core element in the entire process. We will reach our common global goals only if we are able to create equal opportunities for all, address the failures exposed and exploited by COVID-19, and apply human rights standards to tackle deep-rooted intergenerational inequalities and exclusion and discrimination. Today, 10th of December, is an opportunity to reiterate the importance of human rights in rebuilding the world we want, and the need for global solidarity, as well as our interconnectedness and shared humanity. To start off with, I think every article in the Declaration should prevail strongly. There's no debate about that. Sadly, the COVID crisis has been fueled and accentuated by a few things: intensified poverty, rising inequalities, discriminations that are deeply rooted, and many other cavities in the human rights protection. Unless we fill those cavities and bridge the gaps and advance human rights, only then can we fully recover and build back a world that is more resilient, more just, and sustainable. While there would be multiple aspects to ensure human rights protections in the current times, let me share a few points, as you asked, which I think are imperative. Firstly, I think it's very important to end discrimination of all kinds. We cannot have structural discrimination and racism that will only fuel the crisis in the wrong direction. So equality and non-discrimination are primary requirements for the post-COVID world. Secondly, we also need to look at another pandemic of sorts that's running in parallel, the inequality pandemic. And for that, we need to promote and protect social, economic, and cultural rights and create a new era. And thirdly, we need to realize that all of us are in it together, from you and me and people in our neighborhood and communities and civil society to governments and the private sector. Pretty much everyone has a role to play in the building of a beautiful post-COVID world where we can encourage participation and solidarity for a better present and a beautiful future for the coming generations. And needless to say, we need to continue to promote sustainable development for the people and the planet.
Thank you, Dr. Uppaal. Beautifully said. I love what you said about the inequality is the global pandemic that we really must face. And I think part of that is knowing the key is we know that we have our rights, but at the same time is to understand that other people have rights that we need to respect as well as the mutual understanding. So hopefully the equality can spread as we come to the realization of that. So how do you think this intrinsic kindness, how do you think conscience can facilitate understanding of human rights?
I love your question. Okay, for the benefit of being on the same page with the audience, let's just understand what is conscience. So I'm going to share what I believe is conscience. The part of your mind that tells you if what you're doing is right or wrong. For me, that is conscience. And I think that's pretty much what people would believe. So in a way, it's a very powerful and critical aspect of your thinking process because it's helping you to demarcate your way ahead, to distinguish what you should do and what you should not do. So you have to let that voice speak from within because it's your closest and your most trusted friend and confidant. And your conscience, most importantly, won't ever lie to you. So as long as you're listening actively to your conscience, you won't easily go wrong in the choices you make. So now imagine your conscience telling you the right from the wrong at every step, and you, like a good human being, listening to all the goodness you can bring to yourself and people around you. What do you think it's going to lead to? Goodness, probably raised to the power infinity. Happiness, probably again raised to the power infinity. Purity of your soul, raised to the power infinity. Sensitivity and compassion and empathy and care, again probably raised to the power infinity. So many attributes could be raised to the power infinity. Goodness triggers goodness and grows multifold. If I'm good to you and I respect you and your rights as a human being, chances are very strong that you will also be good to me and respect me and my human rights. So conscience has the capability to create a monumental difference in human behavior and relations. The gap may, however, come when we don't pay enough attention to our conscience. For instance, if we look at our day-to-day lives in the current times of the pandemic. We've heard of the shadow pandemic. The UN has spoken of it, right? And we've unfortunately seen a rise in domestic violence across the world. It's sad, but probably it's true. Largely speaking, people were limited to the four walls of their homes in the lockdown for weeks and months. And unfortunately, their patience ran out. Their desperation, their uneasiness, their low levels of tolerance completely took over their personalities. And they probably even stopped listening to their conscience. For example, hypothetically, instead of, let's say, a husband helping his spouse in the daily chores and upkeep of the home, taking care of the children, etc., didn't seem to be consistently participant and helpful. Instead, he was frustrated and irritable and abusive and lost sight of the human rights of his spouse. The spouse, on the other hand, was not only doing all the physical work and chores and had tremendous fatigue and despair, but also bore the brunt of verbal and physical abuse. Sometimes even children have had to cope with the stress from angry and frustrated parents. And this is all an outcome of not listening to the voice of your conscience. So what I'm saying is that the role of conscience is critical to your core functionality. The choices you make, the decisions you take, your thoughts, your actions, your beliefs, and your responses. If you activate your conscience levels, you will not only respect your own human rights, but also respect others and their human rights. I think it's time for people to enhance their life skills like empathy, effective communication, coping with stress and emotions, decision-making and problem-solving, critical thinking, etc., and become more sensitized to the goodness we all innately have as human beings. It is human for us to find solutions, and we must find solutions. I also believe that an educated mind has higher chances to rationalize better and make more informed choices. And I certainly think that everyone must read the Declaration of Human Rights to be better informed about their own rights, as well as the rights of others, for the larger good of global society. We need to learn to live and let live. And like I said earlier, your conscience can play a pivotal role in facilitating your understanding of human rights as long as you listen to it carefully and act accordingly.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. I love what you said. Conscience is our friend, our confidant. It's always with us. And I feel like, we were born with it. And then somehow, maybe sometimes we forget about it. So it's very important. It's kind of like a skill we got to bring back and remind ourselves that it's actually going to really help us. And I can actually feel from what you were saying, you were able to share with us what you said today because you've done it before, because you felt that energy before. So it was actually very, very energetic, very insightful to hear what you shared with us. And it's very encouraging is the word, I'm looking for. So thank you once
so
again.
much.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're all on the same page. We're so many of us in the world, and I think conscience is the single binding factor for all of us. So I think it's really important to understand its relevance and abide by everything that it takes. Like I said, the voice, the little voice that speaks to you, just keep listening to it. That's all that's important.
Exactly, because we can have different laws around the world, but the heart is the same. I'm sure we have the same drive, the same vision within because of our conscience. Thank you, Dr. Uppaal, once again for joining us. We look forward to having future conversations with you as we continue to push for positive change around the world.
Thank you so much, Judy. It was an absolute delight to be on your platform. Thank you so much, and God bless you all.
I would like to extend my deep appreciation to Dr. Uppaal for her motivational perspective